Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. Just wanted to say a little heads up. We had some microphone issues from my side, so that's why it sounds like there's an echo. I apologize. We will try to fix this up before the next episode. Please enjoy. Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. Also, consider supporting our newly launched Patreon. That way, we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about animation and the Owl House. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And we have some unfinished business to take care of. So, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when season 2 of The Owl House wrapped up, we never actually had the opportunity to review it. And yes, we will be talking about the finale for the majority of the episode, but I want to ask you, to start things off, how did you feel about the second half of The Owl House season 2?
After rewatching a little bit of the first half, I did end up overall really enjoying the season. We got to see the backstory for Bellows, a little bit more history of the Boiling Isles, look into like the magic, some other relationships of the characters, and even got to see like a little bit of King's backstory before it, unfortunately, we were given a misdirect of who that mysterious fellow who gave Hootie the letter and such. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel rushed in the second half. Understandably so, though. Disney and whoever made the decision at Disney cut the show as a whole short by basically saying, we're not going to give you another 25 episode season. You're going to have not as many episodes for season 2 and only 3 specials to wrap up the entire story. No pressure. That's not absolutely frustrating as hell to Dana Terrace and the entire team working on what was one of the best shows of this decade so far.
Yeah.
But sure. Greenlight more Marvel and Star Wars shows for Disney Plus that nobody talks about or don't have all that positive of words to say about most of them outside of Andor. Oh, that this company is frustrating like crazy sometimes. And it's also just another situation of how people only care about the intellectual property. They care about the brand, not about other things. And that sucks because the Owl House got cut short. And whatever we say about this, I saw some smarmy comments comparing the finale of Owl House to Steven Universe, saying it was like they thought it was like a petty stab at Steven Universe's philosophy, when it's just like, Steven Universe also got like the short end of the stick because of the company that owned the show cutting it short, like the Owl House, right? They're basically two sides of the same coin. But back to season 2. I liked how they set up Bellows more, because at first, with the first season, he was fine as a villain, very creepy, ominous, and then you start to peel back the pages or I guess his fake skin to realize his history and such. And granted, I wish they focused on some of the other characters a little more, but again, the show got cut short. I'm sure they wanted to do a 3 or 4 season show, but then of course, we just said what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I still loved its storytelling, its characters, and the emotional arc that they all went through, and the introduction of the Collector, which again felt a little abrupt to just kind of drop at the very end of season 2. There was something absolutely terrifying about a character like the Collector. A villain that works on childlike emotional logic. There is something absolutely scary about a deity, a godlike entity that you have to be so careful with. It's not just like a Final Fantasy game where you fight God or something like that. It's dealing with an individual who can be swayed to do whatever they want at the drop of a dime. And seeing the cliffhanger ending to season 2, I was so worried about what was going to happen. And then, of course, we saw with the season 3, or season, quote unquote, 3 specials and such. But that's really all I have to say with season 2. It was really good, not as good as the first one, but it's moments where it mattered.
I understand where a lot of the criticisms for season 2 lie, and most of those can be blamed for the series getting cut off at the knees. So pretty much, especially the back half of season 2, had to like kind of step on the gas and get to the important stuff, while characters like Gus and Willow, while they did have some great moments, a lot of their storylines were kind of shuffled off to the side. Whereas I think season 2 has some of the show's highest highs. 2 of my favorite episodes were Reaching Out. This was the one where Luz and Amity enter the underground witching brawls. And then we get some more backstory on Luz's family, particularly the loss of her father. And the other best episode, other than the season finale, is Hollow Mind. This is when Luz and Hunter pretty much figure out what the audience knew from like 5 episodes ago.
It was interesting to see how Hunter's backstory unfolded, and it felt very reasonable with how they handled it. Again, barring any production troubles brought upon by that one scumbag at Disney.
Yep.
Just how he was in denial about Bellows being a truly bad person. It was just amusing seeing, like, so breaking the talismans to drink their magic was not enough to set off every red flag known to witch kind and such. And he was like, nope. And it's like, okay. And of course, the famous kiss between Luz and Amity was just as good as you would think it would be. The right amount of sincere and cute. I liked that it went into a couple directions that I was thinking, like, since a lot of creatives these days are inspired by anime, I was dreading that Rain. I was thinking he was going to die at multiple points in the second season and during these 3 specials. And I was glad that they didn't kill something close to that. It would have been very easy to, because that's how you can get a lot of like fresh made drama and such.
I am more than relieved that Rain made it through the entire series, frankly, because you don't introduce Disney's first non-binary character only to have them axed off like within the same season. I'm glad that they actually contributed a lot to the narrative. Also, they're a bard, so they instantly won me over.
Should we just jump into season 3? Or again, quote unquote, season 3?
Yeah, let's talk about pretty much the ultimate example of Dana and the crew making lemonade out of a bad batch of lemons.
Oh gosh, it was really sad. Every movie goes through production troubles. There is absolutely nothing, not like one show or film that ever went through it unscathed. There are probably some things you can pick up on if you watch a movie or a show enough, but can be hand waved away due to the rest of the product and art making up for it. it sucks when you can see it in real time because when the first special starts, there's like a time skip sequence of multiple months. You can tell that they really wanted to do more, but again, when you only have three specials, they had to cram in a lot of the filler stuff into one 10-minute montage. It was interesting to see that Luz and her friends in the human world and just the constant dread of not knowing exactly what is going on back in the demon realm or the boiling isles and such. And it was kind of fun to see some of the characters use what I think, if I remember correctly, were rejected original designs for all the characters. So Luz ended up looking like her original design.
With the beanie and the striped shirt and all of it.
Yeah, and longer hair and what have you. I did like how Dana's love for horror and dread crept throughout that first special, where you could tell something was up, but it was handled well to you are kept guessing as to what exactly was there. Is Hunter actually seeing something? What will people think about his origins? And what you find out about how Belos was not the only one there in the demon realm and his connection to Hunter. But then you find out that Belos did find a way to come through the human realm through Hunter to get the last batch of, or was it the last batch of Titan's blood? Or
I don't know if it was the last batch, but it was like a batch. Evelyn, the witch who was the love interest of Caleb, Philip's brother.
yeah,
That was like how they were able to see each other.
I like that they still kept the stakes high with that special because half of it was slice of life stuff and like I said, filler that they had to cram in. Then the second half kicked things in motion, which helps that, these specials were about 40 to 50 minutes to an hour long. So they were able to do more than what they normally would with a normal 30-minute episode.
That's what I like about these specials is that they felt like they had more weight to them in terms of the stakes, and it reminded me a lot of the Weird Mageddon from Gravity Falls.
It was, of course, extremely sad to see Hunter's original little familiar, Flapjack, end up the casualty of that whole mess. To see Belos just continuously be able to escape and sort of get what he wants and set out to do. Because technically he was like basically turning into mush by the time he was able to unleash the collector and the whole like magic draining event. When we kick into special 2 with Luz, her mom, and everyone going back into the world of the Boiling Isles and what have you, he is basically just grasping for straws or for anything or for anyone to give him an inch so he can take a mile. It was rather impressive how they framed Belos throughout this whole series, where he was not a great person at the beginning. He played off his more gaslighting, manipulative, emotional strategies under like, oh, I'm just a fumbling goof who is just the oddball and he doesn't fit in. He's the polar opposite of Luz and her friends.
Exactly.
Instead of finding kindness and happiness among individuals and like people with similar situations, Belos used it as a means to an end, to his end. It's like that CGI He-Man show we talked about, where you could tell the difference between He-Man's battle cry and Skeletor's battle cry of "we have the power" compared to "I have the power."
Oh, yeah.
I like that never changed for Belos. He could have died if the story didn't give him the few inches that he could take because he was like basically a rotting corpse at the end of it. And of course, his actual look was reminiscent of who he was as an individual.
I was just about to
Yeah.
say, like, as his arc progresses, the more messed up and sludgy he becomes, pretty much the more his true colors start to shine.
He becomes what he actually is instead of hiding behind a facade and a mask. And I liked that we also delve into as a whole with the second and third special of the Collector as a character. Because it really could have just been easy to set them off as an agent of chaos, but they were just a child and they didn't know better. They just didn't want to feel like everyone was only there to trick them or manipulate them into doing something because of their powers. I thought that was pretty well handled with the overall realization of the Collector was just a child and they were manipulated by the archivists to get rid of the Titans. Just the scary and sad thought of how they didn't understand what death was.
The Collector, in my opinion, is a victim of Arrested Development because I can't tell how old they are because they are a celestial being. So they've probably been around for at least a millennia. But the fact that they've been trapped in the space in between for so long, on top of not having any real concept of death or consequences for their actions, it does make sense that they still will act childish because all they've ever known is lies, deception. So, of course, they get excited when they finally think they have a friend in the form of King. As dangerous as this being is, it is nice to see them actually bond with another individual. I do like the scenes where King actually tries to sympathize with them and get them to understand that their actions have consequences and they can't just do whatever they want or else people will get hurt.
I liked that they added mythos to someone like the Collector and just made a lot of characters who could have just been easy side characters to ignore and made them part of the story. Like Luz's mom is great. I was so happy that she took more of a role instead of just like, well, I'll let y'all do whatever, because a lot of shows used to do that. The parents stay where they are while the kids go save the day. Then seeing the other the secondary characters from the school and whatnot, like show how they take action with certain things. And I loved seeing Amity's brother and sister and how the brother was in a full body cast. Like they found a way to keep the dread and tension of these three specials cohesively, but they still found a way to throw in laughs, like how the brother said, it's like, it wasn't empty down there. There were rocks at the bottom. It was a nice balance of humor and storytelling, which is always a thing that I think a lot of shows from the 2010s to now had to struggle with when it was like, oh, so we can just do episodic stuff and we'll be fine. And then the creator or someone gets an itch of like, but what if we push it further? I mean, that's kind of like what was nice to see when something like Critical Role, like in the first campaign, it was very much just, here are your basic character templates. And then one of the players, Marisha Ray, brought some mythos to Keyleth. And then everyone was like, well, wait a minute. I want to have more to my characters as well. So everyone got their story arcs and such. That's what's happened with a lot of cartoons from the 2010s, I think. Because you can watch like the first few seasons or like the first season and see how not connected the overarching stories are until like the last third. And then they start to get more story focused and having less filler and such, because a lot of shows back then and now still have filler for reasons of either padding out the story or episode count and what have you.
There's a certain rhythm to how these shows kind of came together. Both the first seasons of Amphibia and The Owl House had a, I guess, relatively light first season to kind of get the audience hooked, let them explore the world, get to know these characters. And then season 2 is when the story really kicks into high gear. That's when we start to get a little bit a better idea of what the stakes are, who we should be rooting for, who should we be rooting against, all of that stuff. And then the final season is like when all of the stuff hits the fan. And while I would have loved to see a full season 3, imagine spending like 5 to 10 episodes of everything that happened on Earth in thanks to them. That would have been so much fun to see. Like, we could have had the beach episode or Luz and Amity's date in the human realm, all of that stuff. Also, I'm sure there will be more time spent on Luz's depression, as clearly after the events of King's Tide, she's not doing so well. In fact, she's so racked up with guilt that the decision that she makes behind everyone's back is, when all this is over, I'm going back to the human realm permanently. Fortunately, Camila is awesome, and she, doesn't let her friends know that, and she takes the initiative and joins them in the demon realm. And then also, she has a great moment with Luz in For the Future, where she pretty much snaps her out of it. Oh no, you're great. All I ever wanted for you was the best. All of that stuff. That whole sequence was probably the highlight of the episode, or one of the highlights, because that is also where Luz finally gets her talisman, String Bean, and this thing is adorable.
String Bean was a delight. I wish we had a little more time to enjoy it, but I was impressed with how, I was not really sure what it was going to be, or if it was just going to be like an orb or something, because I thought it would be boring if it was just like another owl, because it had to be special to her. Like we said, like multiple times already, with the whole production issues and such, especially with that. I think it was in the second to last episode of season 2 where they're doing the heist, and Lou says, too bad we don't have another 20 or 40 days to do something.
It wasn't the second to last, it was
our third to last or whatever.
Yeah. Where Ida's like, why are you doing all this for a stuffed bunny? Wouldn't you rather, I don't know, have a go to the beach? And Lou says, maybe if we had time for 20 more adventures, but we don't.
Basically calling out the fact they got cut short. Sometimes if a show is in production when that happens, they'll fit in something like that. Like Paradise PD in the very last minute, like during the credits, was like, wait, that's it? We're not getting another season? Nope, we got canceled. And it's like, well, okay, then now on to the next show. Or some anime OVAs will sometimes make jokes about that, where they're like, I don't know who you are. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see what happened here. I got the videotape. They're like, oh no, my scene got cut. And it's like, ha, okay. Like, with whatever they were able to do, no matter how jam-packed it all was, they handled these 3 specials well. And I mean, I'd hate to say that the third one is my favorite because it's the final one. It felt like the best one to me, with how when they get back to the demon realm, we find out that the collector has basically taken over everything and has turned people into puppets and just plays around with them, and has King by their side, where they just don't quite get it, and then they try to find a way to get King and get everyone out of there.
Before we get too far, I don't want to skimp over some of the other important character beats. Like, the other highlight is Willow in For the Future. She, more than the other characters, got the shortest straw in season 2. Watching her completely chew Basha out for just being all types of awful, but then also getting probably the most badass moments when she has like full control of her abilities again and taking out Kikimora. And for all you Huntlo fans, yeah, they even get a nice moment too.
It was a shame to see Willow get the short end of the character development stuff. Like season 2 had a good job of like building up a lot of characters there, including Amity's parents and the dad realizing like, you know what, you're awful to the mom. We're not going to do this anymore. Yeah, it was just like you could see it on screen at all times of just like it's that Simpsons gag or joke where it's just like when not on screen, everyone should be asking, where's Willow? Everything can't go on without Willow. Did they ever give an explanation for that? For getting the short end of the character development stuff until the second special, but I guess once again it's our favorite thing to say. Production woes.
I'm just going to assume that sacrifices were made in the process.
Yeah, no, it's just a bummer. They definitely do a lot of things to make everyone feel more completed as a character with Hunter, Willow,
and Gus.
Really happy that they kept Gus fascinating and such, and they didn't like leave him behind or whatever. I loved his times with Hunter as they bond over what is essentially like a Star Trek parody.
I think they call it like Base Destiny or something.
And the mom being like, "Oh, you found those." I was just like, "What's the story here?" And to find out that it's just like she was basically the same individual as Luz and just felt like she had to hide everything in the back away from Luz, so hoping that Luz wouldn't be like her, but of course Luz was similar to her and like what have you and such with her story arc with coming to terms with Luz and making sure her daughter knew that everything was okay.
And something else I really enjoyed throughout this series is the more we learn about Luz and her family, particularly about her dad, everything about her character up until this point finally comes full circle. Even down to her favorite book series, The Good Witch Azura, that was a gift from her father. I'm assuming season 1 begins not too far from, or maybe at most like a few years after his passing, because the two of them, Luz and Camila, have not had the easiest time dealing with grief, with Camila tucking away her nerd side and with all the best intentions, basically out of fear. She wants Luz to have a normal life, but little does she know that what she's doing is sort of preventing her from being herself.
I wish we got to see like some flashbacks with Luz and her dad, like at certain points or like at one point or whatever. Granted, we knew that was not going to happen because of the, again, shorter season. It just would have been nice to have a little bit of something akin to that. But what we got of how they handled it was good. It's just, I like this world and I want more of it, which is not a bad thing at all. I will say it's a bit of a disappointment that the mom gets sidelined during the third special because she gets turned into a puppet and so she's taken out of the story. I get that there was probably no way to fit her in because it was mostly like Luz's story at that point for that third special. It was just a bummer.
The way that Watching and Dreaming is the way it's kind of structured, this is probably the closest parallel we get to the pilot, with not only Luz calling back her line, now eat this, sucker, when she's finally taking down Bellows, but the focus of this episode really was on the trio, on Luz, on Ida, and King. And starting the episode off with their worst nightmare, that was pretty terrifying. Waking up to pretty much everything that they feared. With Luz, it's all of her friends turning on her just because of her involvement with Bellows in the episode Elsewhere and Elsewhen. which caused all of the things to happen. With
Right.
Ida, it's finally getting captured. Seemingly Lilith and her mom either working for Bellows or just being their antagonist. And then with King gets trapped by Titan trappers.
It was a good way to start and to realize, like, hey, the collector is just playing tricks on you to playing their games and such. And then we get to see once again what maybe could have been or should have been at the very least, a 2-part episode, or at least one episode where they fight against the collector's games and such, which of course was only there for like a few minutes because of everything else they had to fit in.
Right.
I liked that they had a good message about how kindness and care does help with a lot of situations.
Except for one.
Yeah, except for one, which I'm happy that. I mean, like, I'm not as snooty against the whole redeeming the villain trope thing as most people are. It's more, I want it to be used more carefully.
There's a time and a place for villain redemptions, and there are going to be a lot of comparisons between Amphibia and the Owl House, but the one difference, the one thing that sets them apart is Bellows or Philip, depending on which term you want to use, they have not earned redemption because they have no redeeming qualities. From the start, Philip has been a manipulative
piece of garbage.
Yeah, he had to go. There was no other way to close out his arc.
But before we jump too far ahead, I want to talk about one moment that I thought was just the best part of the episode. When Luz, quote unquote, dies, is sent off to this weird little area of in-betweens and is picked up by Daddy Titan, or Papa Titan as they are called. It turns out to be King's actual dad. First of all, love the design. I thought this kind of dad look to the character was a good idea, and it makes sense with King's character, I would say. I mean, yeah, it could have been cool to show Papa Titan to be like this big, ominous creature, but it makes more sense. Yeah, he looks like a dad and does dad jokes and such. And it took me the longest time to find out who he was voiced by, because it bugged me that it's like, this is a really good voice, but I can't pinpoint who it is. And then to find out that it's Aaron Hansen, aka Ego Raptor from Game Grumps. He brought this force and this vibe to the character that I get vibes from when I watch something like The Secret of Nim, like that whole sequence with the owl.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of like old-fashioned tone of voice.
By the way, I love how there's like a birdworm sticking out of his eye, kind of like Hootie.
Is that what Hootie is? Is he just like a giant, gross birdworm?
That's what I'm going to call him.
I was very impressed with that whole moment because it reminded me of a movie we talked about way back in 2021. I say that like it was years ago when it was only like 2.
To be fair, it felt like years ago.
Yeah, where we talked about The Legend of Hay, that Chinese animated film.
Oh, yeah.
And it had a very similar philosophy of just like, yes, their ideals and philosophy may sound, for lack of a better word, but it was great that King's dad told Luz, who was doubting her actions, you assume that Bellows is doing all of this for good intentions. And that's where it hits that Luz wants to save everyone because she has good intentions. Bellows does not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you do the whole redeeming story arc for a villain, or lack of one. It was a very gruesome death. I mean, like, first of all, love the design of Bellows when he's this big, giant blob dragon. And then this stuff beforehand where he took control of the rain puppet. Then when we get to the sequence where like Luz is brought back and has like Titan powers and magic and what have you.
I want to give another shout out to Rain for after being controlled by Bellows, and once they make it back to the castle, Rain does not go down without a fight. The fact that they survive means that they are probably one of the most formidable witches in all of the Boiling Isles.
Well, Bellows made a comment saying like, "Ugh, it was annoying of how strong our Rain was." It was telling. The leader of the Bard Coven was one of the strongest people. That was one thing that I was disappointed in with the whole rushed season and such. I felt like we were supposed to know more about the other heads of the covens.
I was expecting something like that too. Like, there are supposed to be 9 coven heads, and I was kind of expecting like once every couple episodes, or like maybe for like a string of episodes, we get like to learn more about each of the coven heads and how some are just as irredeemable as Bellows, while others are a bit more like neutral.
Which we found out with those two coven leaders that helped Rain.
Darius and Eberwolf.
Yeah, this is just me. They had cool designs, but there was no time to actually take it all in. So it was just a bit of a bummer. But back to the whole fight with Bellows against Luz and her new Titan magic stuff. Great animation. Love the action. And how they just rip out Bellows from the Titan. And even when Bellows is back to his human form, instead of being like, I am sorry for my actions, he goes back on his nonsense and just acts like, oh, I was also taken control of by evil magic, and I thank you for helping me.
My
Yeah,
favorite
go
thing
ahead.
about this is that Luce doesn't say a single word. She just kind of stands back, lets Ida, King, and Rain stomp all over him.
First off, she lets the acid rain melt Bellows to like a puddle and such. Reminds me a lot of how that one guy in Infinity Train died, just how gruesome it was.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was a very satisfying ending because again, there was no need to redeem Bellows. I was wondering, like as I was watching it, what they were going to do with how they were going to end it. Will Luz go back to the human world and never go back to the demon realm or the Boiling Isles? But no, she found a way to have an ending where she can be in the human world, but also go back to the demon realm or the Boiling Isles and such. And I thought that was a great ending. I thought that was like because a lot of shows like to do that where it's like, well, this is goodbye. And it's just like I know some people are like, well, real life isn't that like that. You can't have it both ways. And it's like,
Says who?
you have to make it work, but why not let Luz have everything in the end? It's also a show. It's not real life. We don't have talking Titan dogs or a giant disgusting owl worm voiced by Alex Hirsch or magic and such, or at least magic on the scale of the Owl House and such. We don't drink stuff like apple blood or whatever. I don't know. It's just like again, it's sometimes it feels like some people just do not have an imagination or just any magic at all in their hearts.
Yeah, it really does feel like that. But what I like about this ending is it is uplifting in many ways because lessons are learned, characters are reunited. It is also just really heartwarming to see King and the Collector have like a genuine friendship.
Their moments were great and that they were able to stay friends and whatnot because they could have also killed off the Collector, but they didn't. That whole ending sequence, I mean, like I said, my favorite part was Luz talking to Papa Titan was like my favorite, but my second favorite was the whole credit sequence. And I know it sounds so easy to make a smarmy joke about like because the show is finally over. No, I love this overall show and the montage of things that changed over time, like because a few years pass and things are still like coming back together and what have you in the Boiling Isles. It was nice that they were able to show off like how much has changed and like all the different relationship dynamics, and it was just beautiful with that remix of the endings theme song
Hmm.
for the credits, and it was just touching to watch it all unfold.
And something that I also really like about the way that they did the credits is, I don't know if you noticed, but that was a whole 5 minute scene where the creative choice to have animation over the credits was so you can see somewhat of an epilogue to the series, but also all that time gives everyone who worked on the show their credit where credit is due.
It was nice. I love that. And because, it's not just one person who makes a show, it takes a ton of people and entire studios to make a show and make sure it works and all that jazz. It was brought a tear to my eye and it just made me feel good inside. It also made me feel mad that we were cut short of more Owl House. And from the sounds of it, it just does seem like, and who knows, I could be wrong. It just seems like things did not end well for Dana and the relationship with Disney as a company. I hope that doesn't stop her from still creating shows. I hope people like Amazon or Universal go to her to help craft new shows or movies for them. It just sucks that Disney or whoever made the decision to cut the show short cut off something special.
Here's the worst part about this. So when this decision was made, I believe either it was like towards the end of the production of season one or the season one finale was airing, because that sucks for two reasons. Internally, they cut off the show before it really got popular. And seeing like the numbers of like views these episodes got on YouTube, and like seeing how it's trending on Twitter almost like every single day, it really sounds like the people at Disney are like, oh, well, damn, we really forked up this time.
They did. It's always the same thing with these blasted companies. They don't realize how special something is because it's like not instant gratification. It's maddening. These companies, these higher ups do not understand when things are good, or it's like apparently it's bad because it's not reaching SpongeBob numbers on Nickelodeon, or it's taking too long to get the fan base it wants, or it's because they're, a bunch of things that are excuses that they give. Because it's rarely, if ever, an issue with the creator. It's always something with the higher ups, unless told otherwise.
All that being said, ultimately, I am glad that this show exists. I'm glad that while season three was shortened significantly, I'm glad that they got to give the show a proper ending. And even one that does leave the door open for more adventures, whether that's in an official capacity or fan fiction, because there will always be fan fiction, no matter where you go.
I just don't know where you go with a sequel series, or if Dana actually wants to do a sequel series and deal with Disney again, because it's easy to say that it all happened under Chapek, which, yeah, a lot of the blame goes towards him also, but Bob Iger is also not the savior that a lot of people are saying that he is.
He's just the lesser of two evils.
And yet he's still evil, so I just hope this changes how they greenlight shows in the future, where like make an overall deal with the company and put into your contract consequences if Disney or someone tries to break it off early. Because if Disney can screw over DeSantis creatives can do that to Disney. I just hope for the best for these creatives because it seems like things are becoming more dire as of right now. No matter how many times other creatives say, don't worry, there's still cool stuff coming out. I know there's cool stuff coming out, but what about everyone else right now?
I'm waiting for that turn of the corner where things start to get better again. Like you said, because of the way animation is produced, we're going to get movies and shows for the next couple years. Well, supposedly. But I'm waiting for things to get better for the industry at large, for new talent to come up and working conditions to be better.
Because, if these companies are going to come back to these creatives after screwing them over, I would feel a little hesitant, but also like ready to make a contract that you could work around and make sure there are no loopholes that they can take advantage of. And considering that Warner Brothers Discovery might get sued because of the merger and unethical cancellation of movies and shows that were completed, I'm hoping there's like a domino effect through the whole industry because the industry cannot and should not screw over creatives.
Agreed.
And it's a shame that the Owl House was a victim of that. I very much enjoyed this overall season and finale to the Owl House. It ends well on a high note that not many shows get to do.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like, this is honestly how I want all shows to end, putting their best foot forward and like delivering everything that you want for your story, for these characters, anything that you can do to ensure that you have as much creative control as possible, ending a series on your own terms. That's ultimately what I want for any series. And again, while things didn't go quite in their favor, they still like put 110% into these final episodes.
No, definitely watch the show as a whole if you have for some reason not watched it. It was one of the best shows from 2020 and one of the best shows of this year. I hope Dana gets to make more shows, and I'll be rooting for her and everyone else to get back on their feet and make something special again.
Well said. I am definitely looking forward to whatever Dana and these individuals are cooking up next.
Next time, we'll be talking about Unicorn Wars and Howl's Moving Castle. We are getting back on the Ghibli journey. I'm sorry that we keep having to go through spans of times where we have to not do it and such.
I'm looking forward to getting back on that journey, but until next time, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Hive at Cam's Eye View. I have my own website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on Twitter and various social media at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. And you can listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.